The case we read about appeals deals with the timing of appeal. So when can you appeal a district court decision? But there's another really important aspect to this, which plays into the RISA decision, which is how do appeals courts evaluate district court results? So once you've appealed, say you're allowed to appeal, what attitude does the appeals court take towards the court's actions below? These are called standards of review. And there's actually a pretty broad range of these, but there's three in particular that you need to know that cover most of the ground. Plus, you need to know a principle of appeal that plays into the likelihood that any given district court decision will be appealed. So, what are the standards of review? One thing to realize is that the way that the appeals court reviews the decision of the district court, that is the trial court below, depends on what kind of decision the district court made. So it's not that we have the same standard of reviewing every district court outcome. It depends what kind of decision it was. So if it's something that's subject to the district court's discretion, so think motions to compel or protective orders in discovery, those are subject to the discretion of the district court. And those will be reversed only if the appeals court finds that the district court abused its discretion. In other words, the district court has to be more than just wrong. It has to be abusing its discretion in some way. It has to be unfair, egregious, vindictive, something like that. So this is a very deferential standard of review. The appeals court would have to determine that the district court really acted outside of the bounds of its allowable action in order to reverse a decision that's discretionary. For findings of fact, the standard of review is slightly less deferential. It's called the clearly erroneous standard. And what that means is that the appeals court assumes that the district court is probably doing a good job of finding facts. And only if it's clear that the court has made a mistake, so for instance, if there is contradictory evidence that the court just doesn't take into account, or if there is a point on which there actually isn't any evidence on one side, but the district court ignores that, something like that would be clearly erroneous. So still quite deferential, but not as deferential as abuse of discretion. Finally, on rulings of law, where the district court says, well, it's not really clear what this law means in this situation, but I think it means X, those get no deference at all. Appeals courts get to determine what the law really means. And so, although you'll often see appeals courts citing district court decisions and saying, this was a thorough and well-reasoned decision, they don't have to do that. They do that when they uphold the decision to compliment the district court and also perhaps to use some of its reasoning. But if they disagree with the district court, they don't have to go out of their way to show that the district court somehow violated its duties the way they would in an abuse of discretion standard. Rather, they can just say, we disagree, this was wrong, this is what we think the law means. So there's no deference at all, and it's adjudicated de novo, so anew. So those three, discretionary gets abuse of discretion, findings of fact get clearly erroneous review, rulings of law get decided de novo. Plus, there's another really important principle, which is the harmless error rule. It says, courts, appeals courts, you should not reverse a trial court action, even if it was mistaken, if it was merely harmless error. In other words, if it didn't affect the outcome of the case. So if I appeal something that I think the district court did wrong in my case, one thing that the appeals court has to ask is, Would the case have come out differently? Is there a reasonable argument that you can make that the case would come out differently had the district court made a different decision on this question? And if the answer is no, if it's just a mistake, but probably I would have lost anyway, that's harmless error. And it doesn't matter if the district court was wrong. The appeals court is just not going to reverse that, because there's no point in reversing and having the district court go through the process again only to reach the same result. So harmless error hangs as a rule over the entire appeals process.